My mother grabbed the microphone at my brother's wedding and told 160 guests to pray for me because I was 35 and pathetic. She smirked as the entire ballroom erupted into laughter. I just stood up, smiled, and told her that the man she said would never want me was already here. When the heavy oak doors swung open and the most powerful billionaire in Atlanta walked in, no one was laughing anymore. Especially not when he ignored the bride and groom, walked straight up to me and kissed my forehead. Before I tell you how I destroyed my family's perfect facade in a single night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to smile through the pain of being the family scapegoat. My name is Maya, and I am 35 years old. Tonight was supposed to be the crowning achievement of my mother's life. The Grand Regency Hotel in Atlanta is the kind of place that demands respect the moment you step into its lobby. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars cast a warm golden glow over the grand ballroom. Towering centerpieces of expensive white orchids and rare hydrangeas sat on every single table. It was a flawless display of immense wealth and undeniable status. And that was exactly what my mother Vivian cared about more than anything else in the world. I was seated at table 42. It was a small, poorly lit table tucked away near the kitchen doors, right next to the swinging hinges, where the waitstaff rushed in and out with heavy trays. I was seated with distant cousins and a few of my brother's loud college friends who had responded to the invitation at the very last minute. This placement was absolutely no accident. It was a deliberate message from my mother. In her eyes, I was the ultimate family embarrassment. I was the girl who dropped out of medical school, the one who had supposedly failed to build a proper career, and the one who could not manage to secure a wealthy husband. Keeping me hidden in the shadows was her way of protecting the pristine image of absolute perfection she was projecting to the rest of the room. From my dark corner, I quietly watched my mother hold court at the central tables. Vivian was truly in her element, wearing a custom silver gown that probably cost more than my first car. She was laughing loudly, touching the arms of prominent church elders and local politicians, making sure everyone saw how successful her family was. My younger brother, Jamal the groom, was standing right beside her. At 32, Jamal was the undisputed golden child of the Caldwell family. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo and flashed his signature charismatic smile, playing the role of a highly successful tech entrepreneur to absolute perfection. Growing up, he received the praise, the endless funding, and the unconditional support, while I received nothing but harsh criticism and impossible standards. Jamal's new bride Lauren was floating through the crowd with her father Harrison. They were a wealthy white family from the most prestigious suburbs of the city. Harrison exuded the kind of old money arrogance that commanded immediate attention from everyone around him. He spent the entire cocktail hour casually mentioning his family's commercial real estate empire and their vast generational wealth. Lauren was simply a younger version of him. She was undeniably beautiful, but entirely wrapped up in her own inflated sense of superiority. They were the perfect high society props for my mother's ultimate social climbing fantasy. I was quietly sipping my sparkling water when Lauren walked over to my table. Her massive diamond engagement ring caught the light as she rested her hand on the back of my chair. She looked down at me with a smile that was entirely devoid of any real warmth. "Maya," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "I am so glad you could make it tonight. Jamal told me you were really struggling with your little consulting business. It is so incredibly brave of you to show up and celebrate his massive success when you are going through such a hard time financially." I looked up at her, keeping my expression perfectly neutral and composed. "I am doing just fine, Lauren. Thank you so much for your concern." She sighed heavily and patted my shoulder like I was a helpless child. "You know, if things get too tough, my father's company is always looking for administrative assistants. I could put in a good word for you. It is honest work, and it might help you get back on your feet so you do not have to struggle so much." I took another slow sip of my water. "You are very generous," I replied softly. Lauren smiled a tight, satisfied smile, thinking she had successfully put me in my place. She turned around and glided back toward the brightly lit section of the room, completely unaware of who she was actually talking to. She did not know that my little consulting business was actually one of the most ruthless private equity firms on the East Coast. She did not know that I was the founder and majority shareholder. And she certainly did not know that earlier that very morning, my firm had quietly purchased the massive crushing debt of her father's supposedly wealthy real estate empire. Her family was teetering on the edge of complete bankruptcy, and they were desperately hoping Jamal's fake wealth would save them. The irony of her offering me an administrative job at a company I now essentially owned was almost too delicious to bear. The gentle clinking of a spoon against crystal echoed through the massive ballroom, cutting through the loud chatter and the soft jazz playing in the background. The master of ceremonies stepped up to the podium and tapped the microphone to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with a booming voice, "if I could please have your attention for a moment, it is my great honor to introduce the woman who made this beautiful evening possible. Please welcome the mother of the groom, Vivian Caldwell." The room erupted into loud applause. My mother stepped up to the stage, her silver dress shimmering under the bright spotlights. She took the microphone from the man and waited for the clapping to die down completely. She looked out over the sea of wealthy guests, the church leaders, the local politicians, and her arrogant new family members. Then her eyes moved past all of them, piercing through the bright lights and locking directly onto my poorly lit table in the back corner. A slow, sinister gleam appeared in her eyes. I set my glass down. The main event was about to begin. Vivian clears her throat, the sharp, amplified sound echoing through the state-of-the-art speakers and commanding absolute silence across the grand ballroom. Thank you all for being here tonight to witness this truly spectacular union of two incredible families. She begins, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness and practiced charm. She gestures dramatically toward the head table where Jamal and Lauren are sitting, bathed in the soft glow of crystal centerpieces. "Look at my brilliant son Jamal, a visionary, a natural-born leader, a man who has built an empire from the ground up and made his mother so incredibly proud. And his beautiful bride, Lauren. The blending of our two families represents the very pinnacle of success, a true testament to what hard work, faith, and proper upbringing can achieve in this beautiful city." The audience murmurs in polite agreement, raising their expensive crystal glasses in a unified toast. Harrison nods sagely from his velvet-lined seat, looking immensely pleased with this public validation of his family's supposed elite status. Vivian paces slightly on the stage, the heavy diamonds on her necklace catching the bright stage lights, reflecting her vanity out into the crowd. She spends the next 5 agonizing minutes listing Jamal's entirely fabricated achievements, talking passionately about his fictional tech startups, his exaggerated real estate ventures, and his completely non-existent philanthropic efforts. It is a masterclass in pure delusion, a perfectly rehearsed performance designed specifically to elevate her own social standing among the wealthy Atlanta elite. I sit back in my chair and watch her weave these elaborate lies with practiced ease, feeling nothing but a cold, clinical detachment. This is the woman who spent my entire childhood telling me I would never amount to anything, now standing before 160 prominent people, praising a son whose entire life is a carefully constructed house of cards. I know for a fact that Jamal has not earned a single legitimate dollar in 3 years. But to Vivian, appearances are reality. The truth is entirely irrelevant as long as the optics are flawless. Then the tone of her voice noticeably shifts. The warm maternal glow vanishes from her face, replaced by a sharp theatrical sigh that signals a change in the narrative. She lowers the microphone slightly, letting a heavy, uncomfortable silence fall over the room. But as we celebrate this perfect union, my mother continues, her gaze snapping back to my table in the dark corner like a heat-seeking missile. We must also remember those who are less fortunate, those who have stubbornly strayed from the path of excellence. Every head in the ballroom begins to turn. People crane their necks, their expensive silk and velvet outfits rustling as they follow the direction of her piercing stare. The lighting technician, clearly instructed beforehand, shifts a heavy spotlight directly onto my face, illuminating me for everyone to see. I feel the sudden blinding heat of the light, but I do not flinch. I keep my posture perfectly straight, my hands folded neatly in my lap, refusing to give her the satisfaction of my discomfort. It is no secret that family is absolutely everything to me, Vivian says, her voice echoing mournfully off the high ceilings. And as a loving mother, my heart breaks for those who refuse to reach their potential. Let us all pray for my eldest daughter, Maya. A collective gasp ripples through the well-dressed crowd. Some of the older church women in the front row shake their heads in faux sympathy, clucking their tongues. Lauren covers her mouth with her hand, but her eyes are dancing with vicious, unadulterated delight. Harrison leans back in his chair, a smug, satisfied smirk settling onto his face, as he watches the poor, unfortunate relative get publicly dressed down. She is 35 years old, a college dropout, and still no man wants her. My mother's words hit the room like cracking whips meant to draw blood. She has spent her life chasing foolish, empty dreams instead of building a real solid foundation. Look at your brother Maya. She points a perfectly manicured finger directly at me, her face twisting into a mask of righteous judgment. Look at what he has accomplished. Look at the love, the respect, and the wealth he commands. Learn how to be someone worth loving before it is too late for you. For a split second, the ballroom is dead silent. The sheer, unvarnished cruelty of a mother publicly humiliating her own daughter at a high society wedding is almost too shocking for some of the guests to process. But then Jamal chuckles. It is a low, arrogant, dismissive sound that breaks the tension in the room. Lauren lets out a melodic little laugh, leaning into her new husband, and suddenly the floodgates open. The room erupts. 160 guests begin to laugh. It is not polite, nervous laughter. It is mocking, cruel, and deeply humiliating. The distant cousins sitting at my own table awkwardly shift their chairs away from me, as if failure and pathetic desperation are contagious diseases. The politicians and wealthy socialites point and whisper behind their crystal champagne flutes, completely entertained by my public execution. In the past, this is exactly where I would have broken. 10 years ago, the 25-year-old version of Maya would have burst into hot, humiliating tears, pushed back her heavy chair, and run out of the ballroom in absolute shame. I would have let my mother's toxic narrative crush my spirit, proving her right in front of the entire world. I would have believed that because I dropped out of medical school, because I refused to marry for status, or conform to her rigid, suffocating expectations, I was fundamentally unlovable and broken. I would have internalized every single laugh echoing through this room. But I am not 25 anymore. I am 35. I am a woman who has spent the last decade building a private equity empire through sheer force of will, countless sleepless nights, and ruthless, calculated business acumen. I have destroyed corporate titans who thought they could intimidate me. I have dismantled century-old companies and rebuilt them from the ground up. I currently hold the financial fate of half the people in this very room in the palm of my hand. My mother's petty high school-level bullying feels like a gentle breeze blowing against a solid concrete wall. She thinks she is destroying my world, completely unaware that I am the one who owns the ground she is standing on. I look at the stage. Vivian is smiling broadly, practically glowing with the satisfaction of having publicly executed my dignity to elevate her golden child. She expects me to cry. She expects me to lower my head in shame. She expects me to flee the room so they can all shake their heads and murmur about my fragile mental state. Instead, I reach for my champagne flute. The crystal glass feels cool and solid against my fingers. I stand up. The movement is slow, deliberate, and entirely unexpected. The cruel laughter in the room begins to falter, dying out in confused patches as people notice that I am not running away. I stand tall in my tailored evening gown, the spotlight still harsh and blinding on my face, and I look directly into my mother's eyes. The triumphant smirk on her face wavers just a microscopic fraction as she registers my absolute lack of fear. I raise my glass high into the air, offering a perfectly composed, elegant toast to the woman standing on the stage. The silence returns to the ballroom heavier and far more suffocating than before. 160 pairs of eyes are locked on me, waiting for a breakdown that is never going to come. I take a slow, calming breath, letting the anticipation stretch until the tension in the room is nearly palpable. "Thank you for the prayers, Mom," I say, my voice projecting clearly and calmly across the vast, silent ballroom, cutting through the heavy atmosphere like a diamond slicing through glass. But he is already here. My mother's brow furrows in genuine, unmasked confusion. Jamal stops laughing immediately, his arrogant posture stiffening. Lauren's smug smile freezes completely on her face. They do not understand what I mean. I can see the gears turning in their heads, assuming this is just a desperate, pathetic bluff from a woman trying to save whatever tiny shred of dignity she has left. They think I am imagining a savior who does not exist. But before Vivian can raise the microphone to her lips to deliver another crushing, dismissive insult, a heavy sound echoes from the very back of the hall. It is the loud, unmistakable sound of the massive brass latches on the ballroom doors being thrown open. The heavy oak doors do not just open gracefully, they burst apart with a resounding, heavy thud that shakes the nearest tables and makes the crystal glasses rattle. The spotlight operator, startled by the sudden violent noise, jerks the beam away from my face, sending the bright white circle of light swinging wildly across the intricately painted ceiling. 4 men step into the grand ballroom first. They are not hotel management, and they are certainly not late-arriving guests. They are elite private security. They are dressed in immaculate dark suits with discreet earpieces, their eyes scanning the crowded room with a cold, professional efficiency that immediately changes the atmosphere from a joyful celebration to a tense lockdown. They move forward in perfect unison, creating a clear, wide path through the sea of shocked and silent guests. The air in the room seems to get sucked out all at once, leaving everyone holding their breath. And then he walks in. Julian Pierce is 38 years old and carries the kind of absolute power that never needs to announce itself loudly. He is a titan in the world of commercial real estate and technology. He is a self-made billionaire who operates on a level of wealth that makes the affluent people in this room look like children playing with pretend money. He is wearing a custom-tailored midnight blue tuxedo that fits his broad shoulders perfectly. He looks completely at ease and devastatingly handsome as he surveys the space. I sit in the shadows and watch the exact moment my family registers who has just walked into their carefully orchestrated event. Jamal stands up so incredibly fast that his heavy wooden chair tips backward and crashes loudly to the floor. The arrogant, self-satisfied smirk is completely wiped from his face in a fraction of a second. It is replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated shock. Beside him, Lauren gasps loudly, her hand flying up to clutch her throat as her eyes widen in disbelief. But it is Harrison, Lauren's father, who has the most visceral and pathetic reaction. For the past 6 months, Harrison and Jamal have been desperately bleeding money. They are drowning in corporate debt and have been begging for a single 15-minute meeting with Julian Pierce. They have sent lavish gifts, pulled every political string they could find, and practically camped outside his corporate headquarters in downtown Atlanta. They have been praying daily that his firm would inject the capital needed to save their dying companies from complete and total ruin. To them, Julian is not just a wealthy man attending a party. He is their absolute only chance at survival. Up on the main stage, Vivian is staring at Julian as if a ghost has just materialized directly in front of her. Her mouth is hanging open, but absolutely no sound comes out. Her fingers, which were gripping the microphone so tightly just moments ago, go entirely limp. The microphone slips from her grasp and plummets toward the hardwood stage. It hits the floor with an ear-splitting screech of feedback that echoes terribly through the speakers, making half the guests physically wince and cover their ears. She does not even flinch. She remains completely paralyzed by his sudden godlike presence in her venue. Julian does not look at the stage. He does not look at the brightly lit VIP tables. He does not acknowledge the frantic whispers rapidly spreading through the crowd as people begin to recognize his face from the covers of prestigious financial magazines. His dark, intense eyes lock directly onto mine, sitting quietly in the shadows of table 42. He walks with slow, deliberate purpose across the expansive ballroom floor. The wealthy guests instinctively part for him, pulling their chairs inward, too intimidated to even breathe in his direction or meet his gaze. He moves past the towering floral arrangements, past the absurdly large tiered wedding cake, past my brother who is practically vibrating with the desperate need to be noticed. Jamal takes a hasty half-step forward, opening his mouth to speak a greeting, but Julian's security detail seamlessly shifts formation. They block Jamal's path without even breaking their stride, treating the groom like an annoying obstacle. Julian finally reaches my table. The few distant cousins sitting near me scramble to get out of the way, practically tripping over their own expensive shoes to give him space. He stops right in front of me. The cold, intimidating aura he carried across the room melts away, instantly replaced by a profound warmth reserved entirely for me. He smiles a genuine soft smile that makes my heart race just a little bit even after all our time together. "Sorry I'm late," he says, his deep voice carrying easily in the dead, silent room. "My board meeting ran over and the traffic was unforgiving." He reaches out gently, taking the champagne flute from my hand and setting it softly on the table. Then, with an effortless grace, he slips off his expensive suit jacket. He steps behind my chair and drapes the heavy, warm fabric over my bare shoulders. The rich scent of his cedar and bergamot cologne wraps around me, serving as a familiar, comforting shield against the toxic and suffocating atmosphere of this room. He leans down, pressing a long, lingering kiss to my forehead. "You look absolutely breathtaking," he murmurs, his lips brushing against my skin so gently. "But this room is entirely too cold for you." I smile up at him, feeling the absolute shift in power radiating through the space. Before I can reply to his sweet words, the heavy silence of the ballroom is shattered by the sound of frantic, stumbling footsteps. Harrison has completely abandoned his carefully cultivated image of old money dignity. He is sweating profusely, large dark patches forming under the arms of his tailored shirt. His face is flushed, an unhealthy shade of red, as he physically pushes past two waitresses carrying trays. He sprints across the polished dance floor, his expensive shoes slipping slightly on the wood, but he catches himself, practically throwing his entire body toward our corner of the room in sheer desperation. Mr. Pierce Harrison gasps out, breathless and frantic, stopping just inches from the security guards, who instantly form an impenetrable human wall between him and Julian. "Mr. Pierce, please, I am Harrison Lauren's father. We have been trying to reach your private office for months. I just need one single moment of your time. Please, it is a matter of absolute life or death for our company." Julian does not even blink at Harrison's desperate pleading. He looks right through the older man as if he is nothing more than a minor inconvenience on the polished floor. The security guards do not budge an inch, their faces completely impassive as Harrison continues to sweat and stammer about his failing commercial real estate empire. Up on the stage, the reality of the situation finally crashes down on my mother. Seeing Julian Pierce, the billionaire savior, everyone in her elite circle has been whispering about for months, kissing my forehead and claiming me as his own. Vivian snaps out of her paralyzed state. The absolute terror of losing this golden opportunity instantly overwrites the cruel narrative she was spinning just moments ago. She drops her elegant posture and practically sprints off the stage. Her high heels click rapidly against the hardwood as she pushes her way through the gaping relatives and shocked church elders. She approaches our table with a bright, completely artificial smile plastered across her meticulously made-up face. "Oh my goodness, Maya, my sweet, beautiful girl." She coos loudly, making sure her voice projects perfectly to the surrounding VIP tables. "Why did you not tell us you were bringing such an incredibly special guest to share in our joy?" She reaches out, attempting to pull me into a warm, maternal embrace, completely ignoring the fact that she had just publicly humiliated me and called me a pathetic failure less than 2 minutes ago. I do not move toward her. I take a slight step back, letting Julian's solid presence serve as a natural physical barrier between us. Vivian's arms fall awkwardly to her sides, but her fake smile never wavers. She pivots seamlessly, directing her desperate charm toward the man standing beside me. I watch the frantic calculations happening behind my mother's eyes. This is a woman who values her church standing and her country club memberships above the actual blood running through her children's veins. Seeing Julian Pierce standing beside me, she is instantly terrified that her cruel public speech has jeopardized her access to his limitless wealth. She reaches out again, her fingers brushing against the fabric of the jacket Julian placed over my shoulders. "Oh, Julian," she purrs, using his first name as if they have known each other for decades. We have been praying for Maya to find a good, strong man to guide her. She has always been so lost, so stubborn, but clearly the Lord has finally answered our prayers by bringing you into her life. I just know you will be such a wonderful influence on her erratic behavior. Mr. Pierce, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you into our family circle today. She continues, her tone dripping with reverence and submission. We are just so incredibly blessed to have you here tonight to celebrate with us. Maya has always been so secretive about her personal life, but as her mother, I am just overflowing with joy to see her with a man of your profound stature. Jamal is right behind her. He practically shoves his new father-in-law out of the way to get closer to the money. Jamal thrusts his hand forward, bypassing the security guards who immediately look to Julian for a physical signal. Julian gives a tiny, barely perceptible nod, allowing Jamal to step forward. Jamal grabs Julian's hand, shaking it with an aggressive, overly familiar enthusiasm that borders on manic. Julian Pierce. "Man, it is an absolute honor," Jamal says, his voice loud and booming desperately, trying to project the image of two highly successful businessmen meeting as total equals on the dance floor. "I am Jamal, Maya's brother. Or I guess I should say your future brother-in-law. It is about time this secretive sister of mine brought you around to meet the real family." Julian looks at Jamal's outstretched hand, his expression completely unreadable, and then slowly withdraws his own hand, wiping his palm subtly against the fabric of his trousers. Jamal does not even notice the slight. He is practically vibrating out of his custom leather shoes. His eyes are darting rapidly between Julian and the security detail, trying to gauge how far he can push his luck. His business is nothing more than a hollow shell company drowning in high-interest loans and unpaid vendor invoices. I know this because my firm audited his digital footprint 3 weeks ago. Yet here he stands, puffing out his chest, trying to sell a bridge to nowhere to a man who owns the river underneath it. "Listen, since you are already part of the family, now we need to talk about my new tech venture," Jamal says, leaning in close, his eyes wide with a frantic kind of greed. "It is going to completely disrupt the regional market. I have been trying to get your acquisition team on the phone for 6 solid months, but they keep giving me the runaround. Now that we are practically family, we can just bypass all that unnecessary red tape. I have the financial projections in my bridal suite right now. It is a guaranteed return on investment, brother, and I want to give you the ground floor opportunity before I take it to anyone else." I watch my brother sweating through his expensive designer tuxedo. He is completely ignoring his bride, his lavish wedding, and the 160 prominent guests who are watching this incredibly pathetic display unfold. He is begging for a financial lifeline while pretending to offer a lucrative and exclusive deal. The sheer hypocrisy of his actions is absolutely sickening, especially after he spent the entire evening looking down on me. That is when Lauren decides she has had enough of being sidelined at her own reception. She cannot handle the fact that the attention has shifted entirely away from her perfect, flawless wedding, and she certainly cannot handle the fact that the most powerful, wealthy man in the room is completely fawning over the sister-in-law she has spent months talking down to. Lauren glides over her massive white designer wedding dress, rustling loudly against the floorboards. She slips her slender arm tightly through Jamal's, looking at Julian with a practiced condescending smile that absolutely reeks of old money arrogance and deep-seated racial microaggressions. She tilts her head, giving me a look of profound and entirely fake sympathy, the kind of look reserved for a charity case who has wandered into the wrong neighborhood. "Please forgive my new sister-in-law," Mr. Pierce, Lauren says, her voice dripping with that distinct, sugary, sweet white privilege tone she uses whenever she wants to gently put me in my proper place. Maya is just a bit overwhelmed tonight. She does not usually mix with our tier of society, and large crowds of highly successful people tend to make her incredibly anxious and confused. Lauren smooths her perfectly styled hair, looking at Julian with wide, innocent eyes that completely mask her venomous intentions. She thinks she is saving the situation by stepping in to manage the awkward, quiet girl in the corner. It is honestly pathetic to watch her perform. She thinks her skin color and her family's supposed historical wealth give her an automatic pass to speak down to me in front of my own partner. She glances at my simple, elegant dress, a subtle smirk playing on her lips, completely unaware that the fabric she is mocking costs more than the catering bill for this entire reception. "We are just so incredibly proud of her for even showing up to support Jamal today, considering how much she struggles with her little failing consulting business," Lauren adds, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper meant to exclude me from my own conversation. "You will have to excuse her silence. It is just so much for her to take in all at once. My father and Jamal have actually been looking for ways to include Maya in their administrative teams. We just want to see her succeed in her own little way. Perhaps with your guidance and our family's resources, she might finally find a stable position that suits her limited capabilities." The sheer audacity of Lauren's words hangs heavily in the air. She is standing there broke and desperate, trying to demean the woman who secretly holds the keys to her entire family's financial survival. I do not say a single word. I simply look up at Julian, waiting to see how the king of Atlanta real estate handles a woman who thinks her fading social status gives her the right to insult his partner. Julian does not even turn his head to look at Lauren. He keeps his dark eyes locked firmly on mine, his expression softening for just a fraction of a second before a terrifying coldness settles over his features. The silence in the ballroom is absolute. You could hear a single pin drop on the hardwood floor as 160 guests hold their collective breath, waiting to see how the billionaire will respond to the blushing bride. He slowly trails his hand down my arm, intertwining his fingers with mine in a display of unquestionable solidarity. Then, without shifting his body toward Lauren, he speaks. His voice is not loud, but it possesses a lethal, icy precision that cuts through the stagnant air of the room like a perfectly sharpened blade. "I do not mix with your tier, Lauren." The words hang in the air, heavy and devastating. A collective shudder seems to ripple through the wealthy onlookers. Lauren's smug, confident smile shatters instantly. She physically recoils, taking a tiny, unsteady step backward, her expensive white gown swishing loudly in the dead quiet room. Her mouth opens, but no sound escapes. She looks like someone who has just had the oxygen violently sucked out of her lungs. Julian finally turns his head. He does not look down at Lauren as if she is a fragile bride. He looks at her as if she is a particularly uninteresting piece of dirt on his shoe. "I mix with hers." He finishes, his voice dropping to a dangerous baritone that commands the attention of every single person within earshot. He steps slightly in front of me, establishing a physical barrier between my toxic family and myself, assuming the role of the shield I have never had. "You speak of limited capabilities." Lauren Julian continues, his tone analytical and entirely devoid of mercy. "You stand here draped in a dress paid for by a family you clearly know absolutely nothing about, and you have the audacity to speak down to the most brilliant, capable, and ruthless woman I have ever had the privilege of knowing." The blood drains completely from Lauren's face. She looks wildly toward her father, Harrison pleading for him to intervene. But Harrison is completely paralyzed, his face a mask of sweating terror. "Allow me to properly introduce the woman you just called a charity case." Julian announces, his voice projecting across the room, carrying over the tables of silent watching guests. Maya is not just the love of my life. She is not just my fiancée. She is my equal in every single room she walks into, and she is the senior managing partner of an acquisitions firm that could swallow your father's entire pathetic portfolio before her morning coffee. I watch my mother, Vivian. Her eyes are wide, darting erratically between me and Julian. She is trying to process the magnitude of what is being said. The daughter she just publicly mocked, the woman she begged the room to pray for, is being claimed as a titan by the most powerful man in Atlanta. The sheer impossibility of the situation is causing her perfectly constructed reality to short-circuit. Your little administrative assistant offer is amusing, Julian tells Lauren, a dark, mocking smile playing on his lips. Considering Maya's signature is required to authorize the operational budgets for corporations you could only dream of setting foot in. The next time you decide to exercise your unearned arrogance, I strongly suggest you do a thorough background check on the person you are trying to humiliate. You look entirely foolish in front of your own guests. Lauren's pale skin flushes a deep, embarrassing crimson. Tears of absolute mortification begin to well up in her eyes. She looks like a reprimanded child stripped of her false superiority and her subtle racist microaggressions. She shrinks away from him, her hands trembling as she clutches the folds of her dress, realizing she has just insulted the one man who holds her family's financial survival in his hands. The elite crowd begins to murmur. The church elders and the wealthy socialites are no longer laughing at me. They are looking at me with a sudden dawning respect and a healthy dose of fear. The hierarchy of the room has violently shifted. The untouchable bride and the golden child groom have just been publicly castrated by the ultimate authority, and the family scapegoat has been crowned. Jamal tries to salvage the disastrous situation. He steps forward again, holding his hands up in a placating gesture, his fake businessman persona crumbling under the immense pressure. Julian, man, there is no need for this. Lauren didn't mean any disrespect. She is just stressed about the wedding. We are all family here. Maya knows we love her. Julian's gaze snaps to Jamal, pinning him in place. Do not ever call me your family, he says softly, but with a menace that makes Jamal swallow hard. You stood on that stage and let your mother humiliate your sister for the entertainment of strangers. You are a fraud, Jamal. A desperate, drowning fraud playing dress-up in a rented tuxedo. Jamal's mouth opens and closes. He looks around the room, seeing the judgmental stares of the very people he has been trying to impress all night. His facade is completely ruined. That is when the desperation completely takes over. Harrison, who has been watching his daughter get publicly destroyed and his last chance at financial rescue evaporate into thin air breaks. He completely snaps under the unbearable pressure of his massive, looming bankruptcy. He physically shoves his way forward. He actually uses his shoulder to violently push his own daughter out of the way. Lauren stumbles, nearly tripping over the hem of her extravagant gown, but Harrison does not even glance back to see if she is all right. He breaches the invisible boundary, throwing his hands up in a gesture of pure, pathetic surrender as he approaches the security wall. Mr. Pierce, please. Harrison begs, his voice cracking with a high-pitched hysteria that completely strips him of his old money dignity. You must ignore my daughter. She is ignorant. She doesn't know what she is saying. I apologize on her behalf. I apologize on behalf of my entire family. He is practically vibrating with panic, his hands shaking wildly as he reaches out desperately, trying to catch Julian's attention. Please, Mr. Pierce. The commercial debt. My company. Your firm promised to consider the bailout. We submitted the restructuring paperwork just like you asked. We are completely out of time. If you do not sign off on that relief package by tomorrow morning, my entire legacy is gone. The bank will seize everything. Please, I am begging you, do not let my daughter's stupid remarks ruin this deal. Julian looks down at the sweating, desperate man clinging to the edge of his security detail. A slow, dark smirk spreads across his handsome face. He does not look sympathetic in the slightest. He looks entirely bored by Harrison and his pathetic theatrics. "You are pitching the wrong person, Harrison," Julian says, his voice perfectly level, but carrying enough weight to make the older man freeze completely in his tracks. Harrison blinks rapidly, wiping a thick bead of sweat from his forehead with a trembling hand. "What do you mean?" he stammers, his voice dropping an octave. "Your acquisition team sent the term sheets last week. We submitted all the financial disclosures. My firm was evaluating your incredibly toxic portfolio." Julian corrects him smoothly, adjusting the cuffs of his tuxedo. "But we passed. The risk-to-reward ratio was abysmal." "My firm did not buy your corporate debt this morning." Julian steps aside, slightly shifting his body weight to bring me fully into the glaring light of the ballroom. He raises his hand and points directly at me. Hers did. The silence that falls over the Grand Regency ballroom this time is not just heavy. It is absolute, suffocating, and total. You could hear a single crystal glass clink in the kitchen 3 rooms over. The wealthy guests are frozen like statues, staring at the scene unfolding on the dance floor. Harrison allows his jaw to drop open. He turns his frantic, bloodshot eyes toward me. Lauren, who had just managed to regain her footing after being verbally destroyed by Julian, lets out a small, strangled gasp. Her perfectly manicured hands fly to cover her mouth. Her eyes are wide with an unadulterated terror that completely washes away her old money arrogance. "That is impossible," Harrison whispers, his voice shaking violently as he stares at me. "She is a consultant. Jamal said she runs a little consulting firm. She is a college dropout." I step forward, emerging completely from behind Julian's protective shadow. I do not need a shield anymore because I am the sword. "Apex Holdings is not a little consulting firm, Harrison," I say, keeping my voice cold, clinical, and completely devoid of the intimidation I used to feel around these arrogant people. "It is a private equity powerhouse. And as of 9 o'clock this morning, Apex Holdings successfully acquired the remaining 68% of your outstanding commercial loans from your primary lenders." I offer him a smile that is sharper than a surgical scalpel. The banks were absolutely thrilled to offload such a catastrophic liability. Your company has been bleeding cash for 3 years and hiding it behind fake ledgers. I am now the majority debt holder of your entire supposedly untouchable old money empire. Your properties, your assets, your corporate legacy. I own it all. Harrison looks like he is going to be physically sick, right there on the polished hardwood dance floor. His knees actually buckle under the crushing weight of reality. He has to reach out and grab the tall back of a nearby dining chair to keep himself from completely collapsing into a heap of expensive fabric and ruined pride. Lauren is staring at me as if I have suddenly grown a second head. The woman she had just mockingly offered an administrative assistant job to is now the sole proprietor of her entire family's financial future. The cruel, racist microaggressions she delivered just minutes ago are now acting as the very nails in her family's coffin. Maya Harrison chokes out, suddenly remembering my name, suddenly dropping the elite, untouchable facade. "Miss Caldwell, please. We can negotiate. We can restructure the terms. You have to give us a chance to sit down and look at the numbers." "You were just laughing at me," I remind him softly, making sure the surrounding VIP tables can hear every single word I say. "You sat at your decorated table and smirked while my mother called me a pathetic failure. You let your entitled daughter treat me like absolute garbage in front of my partner. Negotiation requires a basic level of mutual respect, Harrison. You have shown me none. Therefore, you will receive no mercy." Up on the stage, my mother is watching her entire social fantasy disintegrate in real time. The church elders she desperately wanted to impress are now whispering furiously to each other, their eyes darting between me, the billionaire standing beside me, and the sweating, weeping father of the bride. The local politicians she invited are subtly pulling out their cell phones, likely texting their offices to immediately distance themselves from the impending fallout of Harrison's massive public bankruptcy. Vivian cannot handle the public scandal. Her chest is heaving under her custom silver gown. Her perfectly styled hair is suddenly looking slightly disheveled as the panic sets in. The pristine image of black excellence she tried to project by putting down her own daughter has backfired in the most spectacular and public way imaginable. "All right, that is quite enough," Vivian says, her voice pitched artificially high, attempting a light-hearted laugh that sounds more like a terrified screech. "This is just a silly little family misunderstanding, just a tiny mix-up with business and pleasure blurring together on such a joyous occasion." She rushes forward, grabbing Jamal by the arm and physically dragging him toward us. Jamal looks completely dazed, staring at me as if I am a stranger. He passed on the street. Vivian digs her acrylic nails into his arm, forcing him to stand upright. "We are a proud family," Vivian announces loudly to the staring crowd, giving them a panicked, toothy smile. "We do not do this in front of our lovely guests. Please everyone enjoy the champagne. The band will start playing again shortly. We are just going to step into the VIP bridal suite to sort this minor issue out." She turns back to me, her eyes wide and pleading, but underneath the fear there is still that toxic, controlling matriarch trying to assert her dominance over the child she used to abuse. "Maya," she hisses under her breath so the guests cannot hear, "you are making a terrible scene. Get into the back room right now before the press gets a hold of this and ruins our reputation. Julian, Mr. Pierce, please join us. We can fix this quietly behind closed doors like a real family." I look at Julian. He gives me a brief confirming nod, letting me know he is completely ready to watch me burn their entire world down. I turn my cold gaze back to my mother, then to my golden child brother, who looks like a terrified little boy, and finally to Lauren and Harrison, whose arrogant elite empire has just been reduced to absolute ashes. "Lead the way, Mom," I say, my voice smooth and incredibly dangerous. "Let us go sort out this family misunderstanding." The heavy soundproof door of the VIP bridal suite clicks shut, sealing us inside a stifling and luxurious prison of cream-colored walls and velvet seating. The muffled bass of the ballroom band completely disappears, leaving only the ragged breathing of the people standing in this room. Julian stands firmly at my right side, a silent and imposing guardian, while my mother, my brother, his bride, and her sweating father form a desperate semicircle in front of me. The instant the door is closed, Vivian completely drops her fake maternal smile. Her face twists into a mask of furious indignation. She marches right up to me, her heels sinking into the thick carpet. "Maya, what on earth is wrong with you?" she hisses, her voice dropping into a harsh and frantic whisper. "We are a proud black family. You cannot embarrass us in front of these white folks out there." She gestures wildly toward the door, pointing blindly at the ballroom. I watch her chest heave as she attempts to spin this entire catastrophic failure into a lecture about racial solidarity and family loyalty. She steps closer, her eyes wide and pleading, but completely devoid of any genuine love. Look at Harrison and Lauren. She continues, refusing to acknowledge Julian's terrifying presence right next to me. They are looking at us like we are uncultured animals. "You are making a mockery of everything I have built in this city. Sign the debt control over to Jamal right now. Keep the wealth in the family. It is the exact right thing to do." She reaches out and attempts to grab my hands, but I slowly pull them back, crossing my arms over my chest. Vivian does not even pause to process the rejection. She just keeps pushing the narrative, trying to gaslight me into believing that my empire somehow rightfully belongs to her golden child. "You only got this far because of the work ethic we instilled in you." She lies smoothly, ignoring the 5 years she spent pretending I was dead. "You owe your brother this success. Maya, he is the one who paved the way for you in the business world. He is a man. He knows how to handle these massive corporate accounts. If you hold on to this debt, you will just ruin it and drag the Caldwell name through the mud. Hand it over to him so we can fix this disaster. I stare at the woman who gave birth to me, analyzing her blatant manipulation with absolute cold logic. She truly believes that playing the family card will suddenly erase decades of emotional abuse. She thinks invoking our shared bloodline will make me blindly hand over $40 million of corporate acquisitions to a brother who cannot even pay his own credit card bills, emboldened by our mothers. Ridiculous speech. Jamal steps forward. He straightens his rented tuxedo jacket and puffs out his chest, desperately trying to reclaim the alpha male persona that Julian completely shattered. Just minutes ago, his face is still slick with sweat, but his tone is dripping with unearned entitlement. All right, Maya. The joke is over, Jamal says, holding out his hand, palm up as if expecting me to simply drop a stack of bearer bonds right into it. Have your legal team draft the transfer documents tonight? Jamal demands, his voice growing louder and more aggressive. He actually tries to look down his nose at me, completely, ignoring the fact that his entire fictional business empire relies on my mercy. You have had your fun making me look bad in front of my new in-laws. But this is real business now. You are in way over your head playing with commercial real estate debt. Transfer the deeds and the voting rights to my holding company. By tomorrow morning, I will manage the portfolio and give you a small percentage for finding the deal. He speaks with such staggering delusion that I can actually feel Julian shift his weight beside me, fighting the urge to physically intervene. I place a gentle hand on Julian's arm, silently telling him that I have this under control. I do not need him to fight my battles. I just need him to watch me win them. Lauren, seeing Jamal's sudden burst of manufactured confidence, decides to jump back into the fray. The pure terror she displayed on the dance floor is slowly being replaced by her familiar old money arrogance. She steps up beside her new husband, crossing her thin arms and glaring at me with absolute venom. You are not going to get away with this. Lauren threatens, her voice trembling slightly but filled with spite. My father has the best corporate attorneys in the state of Georgia. Lauren sneers, pointing a shaking finger at me. I am calling our family lawyers right now. We are going to sue you and your little firm for predatory financial tactics. You cannot just secretly buy up our debt and ambush us at my wedding. We will tie you up in endless litigation until you are completely bankrupt. You are nothing but a jealous, bitter woman trying to ruin my perfect day because you are miserable and alone. She reaches for her expensive beaded clutch, ready to pull out her phone and make good on her threat to unleash an army of lawyers upon me. Harrison looks like he wants to stop her, knowing full well that suing your majority debt holder is financial suicide. But he is too paralyzed by the shock of the situation to speak. Jamal continues to aggressively demand the paperwork, stepping even closer into my personal space, raising his voice as he attempts to physically and emotionally intimidate me into submission. They are all screaming now, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of demands, threats, and pathetic gaslighting. They are throwing every manipulative tactic they have at me, hoping that the sheer volume and pressure will force me to break down and surrender my power to them. The room is spinning with their toxic demands and their absolute refusal to accept the reality of their own demise. They truly believe they can bully me into giving up the empire I built with my own two hands. They think the frightened 25-year-old girl they threw away is still hiding inside me, just waiting to be told what to do by her mother and her brother. They have absolutely no idea what is about to happen next. Moving away from the screaming faces of my mother and brother, I slowly walk toward the center of the VIP room. There is a large, tufted leather armchair sitting in the corner, perfectly positioned to survey the entire space. I sink into the soft, dark leather, crossing my legs with careful, deliberate elegance. My champagne flute is still in my hand. I take a slow, measured sip, letting the cool liquid soothe my throat while the absolute chaos continues to unfold right in front of me. The heavy, soundproof door keeps the lively wedding music out, leaving only the raw, desperate sounds of a family realizing their entire foundation is crumbling. Jamal and Lauren do not stop their barrage of insults. They just keep shouting their empty, hollow threats into the stifling air of the suite. Jamal is pacing back and forth across the thick carpet, tugging violently at the collar of his tuxedo as if it is suddenly choking him. He points his shaking finger at me, demanding that I sign the transfer papers immediately. He spins wild, desperate tales about how his supposed tech company will absorb the debt and turn a massive profit for the family. He actually tries to convince me that I am not smart enough to manage the portfolio on my own. He tells me that real estate acquisition is a man's game and that I will end up losing everything if I do not hand over the control to him by tomorrow morning. Lauren stands beside him, her face blotchy and red, clutching her expensive beaded purse so tightly her knuckles are white. She is practically hyperventilating as she threatens to call her powerful corporate lawyers to destroy my firm. She screams about how I ruined her perfect wedding day and how she will make sure I never work in the financial sector ever again. She tells me I am just a bitter, jealous woman who is trying to punish her brother because nobody wanted to marry me. Her voice is shrill and grating, echoing off the walls as she throws a complete temper tantrum fitting for a spoiled child who has just been told no for the first time in her life. My mother! Vivian adds her voice to the chaotic cacophony pacing behind them and nervously wringing her hands together. She keeps repeating the same tired lines about family loyalty and racial solidarity and how I am acting like a cruel, heartless monster. She tells me I am throwing a tantrum for attention and that good daughters do not steal from their brothers. She tries to gaslight me into believing that my success is entirely due to the tough love she gave me growing up. She actually says I should be thanking her for pushing me so hard, because without her harsh words I would still be a pathetic loser. It is a pathetic symphony of desperation and pure, unfiltered greed. I just sit there sinking deeper into the leather chair and watch them dig their own graves with every single word they speak. Julian moves silently to stand directly behind my chair. He rests his large, warm hands on the back of the leather seat, his physical presence a looming shadow of absolute power. He does not interrupt them. He does not try to fight my battles for me. I can tell by the slight relaxed shift in his posture that he is actually enjoying this. He is watching the woman he loves systematically break down the people who broke her first. He knows I do not need saving. I just need an audience to witness my victory. Eventually, the screaming begins to die down as they realize I am completely unfazed by their theatrics. I have not flinched or argued back or shown a single ounce of fear. That is when Harrison decides it is his turn to try and put me in my place. He steps forward, physically pushing past his daughter and my brother. He buttons his suit jacket, trying desperately to reclaim the old money authority that Julian completely stripped away from him on the dance floor. He looks down at me sitting in the chair, his eyes narrowing with a toxic mixture of fear and pure, unadulterated condescension. "Listen here, little girl," Harrison says, his voice dropping into a patronizing growl. "I do not know how you managed to pull off this stunt, but corporate law is not a game for lucky college dropouts. You think buying up my debt gives you the right to dictate terms to me and my family. You are playing with fire. My legal team will tear your acquisition apart. We will find every loophole, every technicality, and we will bury you in so much litigation that your little private equity firm will bleed out in legal fees. You are out of your depth, Maya. You do not understand the complexities of commercial real estate or corporate restructuring. You are just an angry sister throwing a very expensive temper tantrum." The sheer arrogance of the man is almost breathtaking. He is standing in front of the woman who just legally dismantled his entire empire, and he still thinks he can intimidate me with empty legal jargon. He still looks at me and sees a naive college dropout, because that is the exact narrative my mother fed to everyone who would listen. They truly believe I just stumbled into wealth. They cannot fathom that I clawed my way up the corporate ladder, working 20-hour days, bleeding for every single inch of ground I gained in the financial sector. They want to believe I am lucky because accepting that I am brilliant would completely destroy the false reality they have lived in for the past decade. I let Harrison finish his little speech. I let the heavy silence stretch out, allowing his pathetic threats to hang in the air of the bridal suite. Jamal looks smug, thinking his new father-in-law has finally put me in my place. Vivian lets out a deep sigh of relief, falsely believing that the adults are finally taking charge of the situation. Lauren crosses her arms, a nasty little smile returning to her tear-stained face. They all think they have won. They think the pressure has finally broken me. I slowly lower my champagne glass to the small glass table next to my chair. The soft clink of the crystal is the only sound in the entire room. I lift my hand and raise a single finger in the air. The room goes dead quiet instantly. The sheer authority in that one simple gesture completely silences Harrison and wipes the smug looks off their faces. The heavy door to the VIP suite clicks open behind them. My executive assistant, a sharp professional woman who has been waiting in the hallway exactly as I instructed, steps quietly into the room. She walks straight past my gaping family and hands me a sleek silver iPad. I take the device, resting it on my lap. I look directly at my mother, watching the blood drain from her face, as she realizes her nightmare is just beginning. "You want to talk about the family wealth, Mom?" I say, my voice soft but deadly. "Let us listen to how you handle it." I tap the screen of the iPad, and a crystal-clear audio file begins to play through the high-definition speakers in the suite. The sound fills the room instantly, cutting through the thick, suffocating tension. It is a recording from exactly 3 years ago. My mother's voice echoes off the cream-colored walls, sounding hushed and conspiratorial. "Jamal, are you absolutely sure the lawyer will not check the signatures?" The recorded version of Vivian asks, her voice trembling with a toxic mix of fear and sheer greed. "Your grandmother left that account explicitly for Maya. If the bank finds out we bypassed the executor, they will press charges." Then comes Jamal's voice. It does not sound like the confident tech entrepreneur he has been pretending to be all night. It sounds whiny, pathetic, and incredibly desperate. "The lawyer is a friend of mine, Mom. He is going to push the paperwork through quietly. Nobody is going to check the signatures because nobody cares about Maya. We just need to submit the forged release forms by Tuesday." I watch my brother in real time as his own treachery fills the quiet room. His jaw drops open. The sweat that had temporarily dried on his forehead returns with a vengeance, pouring down the sides of his face. He takes a step back, physically retreating from the digital ghost of his own voice. His eyes dart toward Julian, then toward Lauren, looking like a trapped animal, realizing the cage door has just been permanently locked. The recording continues, playing mercilessly. "It is $200,000. Jamal," Vivian whispers on the tape, her voice laced with panic, but ultimately yielding to her golden child's demands. "What if she finds out she is still your sister? She is a college dropout, Mom. She doesn't deserve this money." Jamal's recorded voice sneers, filled with an ugly, vicious sense of entitlement that makes my stomach turn even now. "I need it to cover my losses before the investors find out. My company is bleeding cash, and if I do not inject capital right now, I am going to prison for wire fraud." Maya is just sitting in a tiny apartment doing nothing with her life. She does not need $200,000. The family needs it to survive. "All right." Vivian finally sighs on the recording, sealing the ultimate betrayal. "I will sign as the witness. Bring me the documents tonight, but you have to promise me this will save your business, Jamal." "It will, Mom. I promise." I tap the screen again, and the audio cuts off abruptly, plunging the VIP bridal suite back into a suffocating and terrible silence. The echo of their treason seems to bounce around the room, refusing to fade away. I let the heavy quiet settle over them, allowing the sheer magnitude of their felonies to sink deep into their bones. Vivian looks as though all the blood in her body has been instantly drained out through the soles of her feet. She turns a ghostly, sickly shade of pale, her knees visibly knocking together under her expensive silver gown. She reaches out blindly, grasping the edge of a nearby velvet sofa to keep herself from collapsing onto the floor. The righteous matriarch, who had just spent the last 20 minutes preaching to me about Black excellence and family loyalty, has just been publicly outed as a common thief who conspired to rob her own flesh and blood. She cannot even look me in the eye. Her gaze is fixed on the thick carpet, as if hoping a hole will magically open up and swallow her whole. Lauren turns her head slowly to look at her new husband. The confusion on her face is rapidly morphing into absolute horror. She married a man she believed was a millionaire tech genius. She married into a family she thought possessed deep pockets and high social standing. Instead, she is standing in a room listening to audio proof that her groom is a broke, desperate criminal who had to steal his dead grandmother's money just to keep himself out of federal prison. The pristine image of her elite old money lifestyle is actively shattering into a million sharp, tiny pieces. Lauren whispers, her voice trembling, as she stares at the man she just vowed to spend her life with. What is she talking about? What investors? You told me your company was preparing for an initial public offering. Jamal cannot even look his bride in the eye. He stares at the floor, his hands shaking so violently he has to shove them deep into the pockets of his rented tuxedo. He tries to formulate a sentence, trying to string together another lie, but his mouth only opens and closes uselessly. Harrison looks equally devastated, his hopes of a financial bailout completely crushed under the weight of this massive, undeniable fraud. The man he was begging for salvation is nothing more than a con artist who robbed his own sister. Where did you get that? Vivian finally manages to choke out her voice, barely a dry, ragged whisper. That is illegal. You cannot record private conversations without consent. I did not record it, Mom, I say, my voice perfectly level and devoid of any emotion. Your golden boy was so sloppy, so incredibly careless with his fraudulent activities, that his own former business partner recorded the conversation as collateral. He knew Jamal was running a Ponzi scheme, and he wanted leverage just in case the authorities ever came knocking. He sold the audio file to my private equity firm during our initial background audit of Jamal's shell company last month. Your precious son left a trail of evidence a mile long because he actually believed he was untouchable. I stand up from the leather chair holding the iPad in one hand. My assistant steps forward again, pulling a thick, heavy manila envelope from her leather briefcase. She hands it to me, and I walk over to the small glass coffee table situated in the very center of the room. I do not hand the documents to them respectfully. I raise my arm and violently throw the thick stack of bank statements down onto the glass table. The papers slide and scatter across the smooth surface, fanning out for everyone to see. Red circles and highlighted transaction numbers scream the truth of their crimes to the entire room. I point a steady finger at the thick stack of papers scattered across the glass table. Those are certified bank statements from the offshore account, where you funneled my inheritance, I say, my voice echoing with absolute authority in the small VIP room. It tracks every single dollar you stole down to the very last cent. Jamal's eyes widen, and he takes a step backward, his mouth opening and closing as he struggles to find a lie that could possibly save him. The bravado he displayed just moments ago has completely vanished, replaced by the sheer terror of a cornered animal realizing the trap has just snapped shut. Let us take a closer look at the brilliant tech empire my mother has been bragging about all night. I continue, stepping forward and picking up the top document from the pile. I hold it up for everyone to see. Jamal's company, the one he claims is revolutionizing the industry, generated exactly $0 in legitimate revenue over the last 3 years. It is nothing but a hollow shell company, a pathetic prop designed to convince Atlanta's elite that he is a successful entrepreneur. I drop the paper back onto the table and pick up the next one. But maintaining that high society illusion is incredibly expensive, isn't it, Jamal? The custom-tailored suits, the leased sports cars, the country club memberships, and of course this incredibly lavish $300,000 wedding. Lauren's head snaps toward me, her eyes widening in disbelief. What are you talking about? She demands, her voice sharp and frantic. Jamal paid for this wedding from his company's operational budget. He told me it was a tax write-off. I laugh, a cold, humorless sound that makes Lauren flinch. Your husband does not have an operational budget, Lauren. I say, my voice dripping with absolute contempt. He has a mountain of high-interest debt and a series of maxed-out credit cards. Every single penny spent on those ridiculous white orchids. The imported champagne and your custom designer gown came directly from the trust fund my grandmother left for me. You are currently celebrating your perfect union with stolen money. The color drains completely from Lauren's face. She turns to Jamal, her expression morphing from confusion to absolute horror. Jamal, tell me she is lying. Lauren demands, her voice trembling as she grabs his arm. Tell me you paid for this wedding. Tell me you are not bankrupt. Jamal cannot even look at his bride. He stares at the carpet, his chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face as the reality of his complete financial and social annihilation crashes down upon him. He tries to pull his arm away from Lauren, but she tightens her grip, her perfectly manicured nails digging into his expensive tuxedo jacket. He is not a millionaire, Lauren, I say, delivering the final crushing blow. He is an unemployed fraud drowning in hundreds of thousands of dollars in personal debt. He only targeted you because he thought your father's old money empire would finally bail him out before the authorities caught wind of his embezzlement. He married you for a bailout that does not even exist. Lauren releases Jamal's arm as if he has suddenly caught fire. She stumbles backward, her hands flying to her mouth as a strangled sob escapes her lips. You lied to me, she screams, her voice cracking with pure, unadulterated rage. You told me you were a tech CEO. You told me we were going to buy a house in Buckhead. You are nothing but a pathetic, broke con artist. She raises her hand and slaps Jamal across the face with such force that the sharp crack echoes loudly through the VIP suite. Jamal stumbles sideways, clutching his cheek, but he does not say a word in his defense. He is completely broken, stripped of his golden child status, and exposed as the pathetic thief he truly is. Harrison, who has been watching the entire exchange in a state of catatonic shock, suddenly surges forward. You deceitful bastard! He roars, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple as he lunges toward Jamal. You presented yourself as an elite investor. You sat in my office and promised to inject capital into my firm. You married my daughter under completely false pretenses. Vivian, unable to bear the sight of her precious son being attacked, finally finds her voice. She steps between Harrison and Jamal, throwing her arms out defensively. Do not you dare touch my son! She shrieks, her carefully maintained matriarchal composure shattering completely. We are still a respected family in this city. Jamal just hit a minor financial setback. He is a brilliant man who just needs a little more time to get his projects off the ground. She turns her furious, venomous gaze toward me. This is all your fault, Maya. You are deliberately trying to destroy your brother's life because you have always been insanely jealous of him. You are a monster. I do not flinch at her accusation. I simply look at the woman who conspired to steal my inheritance and smile a cold, terrifying smile. You can scream and deflect all you want, Mom, but the evidence is sitting right there on the table. Your golden child is a felon and you are his primary accomplice. Lauren is sobbing hysterically now, her extravagant wedding gown rustling loudly as she paces back and forth across the room. My entire life is ruined, she wails, her hands clutching at her perfectly styled hair. I married a broke criminal. My friends are going to laugh at me. The country club will revoke my membership. I am a laughingstock. She stops pacing and turns her tear-streaked face toward Jamal, her eyes blazing with pure hatred. I am annulling this marriage the second the courthouse opens on Monday, she screams. I want nothing to do with you or your pathetic, thieving family. I watch Lauren throw her temper tantrum, listening as she plays the victim of a cruel deception. But I know the truth about her family's supposed wealth, and I have absolutely no intention of letting her walk out of this room believing she holds the moral high ground. Don't play the victim, Lauren, I say, my voice cutting through her hysterical sobbing like a knife. You are just as broke as he is. Lauren's fake hysterical sobbing halts immediately, the sheer shock of my statement cutting off her breath completely. She drops her trembling hands from her face and stares at me, her eyes darting nervously toward her father. The sudden silence from the bride speaks volumes, confirming everything I already know. Harrison tries to step in, puffing out his chest, attempting to salvage whatever shredded dignity he has left in this room. "How dare you speak to my daughter that way?" He barks, his voice loud but lacking any real authority. Our family has been a cornerstone of Atlanta society for 4 generations. We have buildings named after us. We are not some new money trash you can casually disrespect. I let out a dry, hollow laugh, the sound echoing off the expensive cream-colored wallpaper. 4 generations of wealth completely squandered in less than 5 years. I correct him, stepping closer to the glass table. I reach for the sleek silver iPad that my assistant is holding out to me. I tap the screen, bringing up a highly classified financial dossier, and turn the device around so Harrison and Lauren can see the undeniable proof glowing in the dim light of the VIP suite. "When my private equity firm purchased your corporate debt this morning," I explain, my voice carrying a ruthless clinical clarity, "we did not just buy the loans blind. We executed a full forensic audit of your entire portfolio. Your so-called old money empire is nothing but an empty, decaying shell. It is currently being propped up by illegal wire transfers, forged asset appraisals, and offshore shell accounts." Harrison physically stumbles backward as if I have just struck him directly in the chest. His mouth opens, but his throat is completely dry. His eyes are wide and terrified, locked onto the screen displaying his most deeply buried secrets. "Did you really think you could hide it from the federal government forever?" "Harrison," I ask, closing the distance between us until he is forced to look me directly in the eye. "The Securities and Exchange Commission has been secretly investigating your firm for gross embezzlement for the past 8 months. They have subpoenaed your chief financial officer. They are preparing to freeze your assets and seize your remaining properties by the end of this quarter. Your entire legacy is built on stolen funds from your own investors." I turn my cold gaze to Lauren, who is now visibly shivering inside her lavish custom wedding dress. The arrogant sneer she wore just minutes ago has been entirely replaced by absolute panic. "And you knew exactly what was happening, didn't you, Lauren?" I say, watching her swallow hard. "That is why you were so incredibly desperate to secure a ring. That is why you pushed to rush this extravagant wedding after only dating my brother for a few short months. There was no old money left for you to inherit. You needed a clueless tech billionaire to blindly bail you and your father out before the federal indictments came down." My mother, Vivian, lets out a loud theatrical gasp. She looks at Harrison, her eyes wide with a horrific realization. "You are under federal investigation," Vivian shrieks, her voice cracking. "You told us you were expanding into commercial high-rises downtown. You told us your family was incredibly liquid and looking to diversify." "They lied to you, Mom," I say, thoroughly enjoying the absolute despair settling over her features. "Just like you and Jamal lied to them. You all sat around the country club sipping expensive champagne and selling each other the exact same ridiculous fantasy." I look between the two families, watching the devastating truth finally crash down upon them heavily. "Do you see the magnificent irony in all of this? Jamal targeted Lauren because he thought her family's generational wealth could save his fraudulent, bankrupt tech company. He needed her old money connections to cover up the fact that he stole my inheritance just to survive the month." I point a perfectly manicured finger at the trembling bride. "And Lauren targeted Jamal because he was flashing around stolen cash, renting luxury sports cars, and pretending to be a Silicon Valley titan. She thought his new money could instantly pay off the SEC and save her father from serving 20 years in a federal penitentiary." The absolute silence in the VIP suite is deafening. The air is so thick with mutual realization and betrayal that it feels like breathing underwater. Julian stands right behind me, a low, dark chuckle escaping his lips as he watches the two scamming families finally understand the catastrophic depth of their own shared stupidity. Lauren looks at Jamal. Jamal looks at Lauren. The illusion of their high society romance is completely and utterly annihilated. There is no love standing between them. There never was. It was just two desperate drowning rats trying to use each other as a life raft, only to realize they have both just shackled themselves to a massive sinking anchor. You are legally married now, I remind them, driving the final brutal nail into the coffin of their perfect wedding day. The paperwork was signed and notarized an hour ago. In the state of Georgia, you just willingly tied yourselves to each other's catastrophic debts. You are two completely broke, fraudulent families, bound together in absolute destitution, hoping to mine the other for gold that never even existed. Vivian covers her face with her trembling hands, letting out a low, miserable wail. Harrison looks like he might genuinely pass out, falling heavily into one of the velvet chairs. They are completely ruined, and the most poetic part of it all is that they did it entirely to themselves. The deafening silence in the VIP bridal suite finally breaks in the most violent and spectacular way imaginable. It does not start with a whisper or a question. It starts with a raw, guttural scream that rips out of Lauren's throat, sounding more like a wounded feral animal than a blushing high society bride. The shock of her complete financial ruin entirely overrides whatever tiny shred of wedding day etiquette she had left. Lauren lunges forward, closing the distance between her and Jamal in a single desperate stride. She raises her hand and slaps my brother across the face with such incredible force that the sharp cracking sound echoes off the cream-colored walls, making the crystal glasses on the side table vibrate. "You are a complete fraud!" she shrieks, her voice cracking as she hits his chest with her tightly clenched fists. "You ruined my entire life, you pathetic liar. You told me we were flying to the Maldives tomorrow. You told me you were a tech genius." Jamal stumbles backward, his hands flying up to protect his face from his new wife's violent assault. The arrogant golden child who was just demanding I sign over my entire corporate portfolio is completely gone. In his place is a terrified, broke little boy, trying to shield himself from a woman who realizes she has just married into massive debt. "Lauren, please stop it!" Jamal begs, his voice high-pitched and frantic as he tries to catch her wrists. "I was going to fix it. The investments just needed a little more time to mature. I can still make it work." But Lauren is entirely beyond reason. She grabs the lapels of his expensive rented tuxedo and shakes him violently, her perfectly styled hair falling into her tear-streaked face. "You are a criminal!" she screams, practically spitting the words at him. "You are a scam artist who stole from his own sister to buy me a ring. You do not even own anything. You are nothing." The physical altercation between the bride and groom is enough to snap Harrison out of his catatonic state. The absolute reality that his last desperate hope for a financial bailout has vanished fuels a sudden explosive rage inside the older man. Harrison stands up so fast that his heavy velvet chair tips backward and crashes loudly onto the floor. He completely ignores his hysterical daughter and marches straight toward my mother. "You deceitful, manipulative woman," Harrison roars, his face mere inches from Vivian's. He is sweating profusely, his eyes bulging with a terrifying mixture of panic and fury. "You paraded your son around our country club like he was the next Silicon Valley billionaire. You completely misled us to secure my daughter's hand in marriage. You sat at my dinner table and lied to my face while you knew your son was drowning in debt. But my mother Vivian is not the type of woman to ever back down from a fight, even when she is caught completely red-handed in her own massive web of lies." The polished, elegant church matriarch facade burns away in an instant, revealing the vicious street fighter underneath. The woman who spent years emotionally terrorizing me finally turns her venom onto someone else. "Do not you dare raise your voice to me, you bankrupt old fool!" Vivian shrieks right back, pointing a shaking acrylic fingernail directly at Harrison's chest. "You are the ones who came sniffing around my son looking for a desperate handout. Your precious little daughter is nothing but a pathetic gold digger who failed to actually dig up any gold." She threw herself at the first black man in a nice suit, hoping his money would magically pay off your federal indictments. The room devolves into an absolute bloodbath of mutual destruction. It is a glorious, magnificent display of total ruin. Lauren turns away from shoving Jamal and charges at my mother, screaming that Vivian is a delusional thief who steals from her own children to buy designer dresses. Jamal tries to get between his mother and his furious new wife, but Harrison grabs Jamal by the collar, shoving him roughly against the expensive wallpaper. They are all shouting over each other, spitting vicious insults, and completely tearing apart the perfect wedding illusion they spent hundreds of thousands of stolen dollars to create. The elegant facade of black excellence and old money prestige is completely annihilated, leaving only four desperate broke criminals fighting bitterly over the pathetic ashes of their fake empires. They are accusing each other of fraud, threatening lawsuits they cannot afford, and screaming about calling the police, completely ignoring the fact that they all belong behind bars. I just stand there in the center of the room watching the absolute carnage unfold, with a deep, cold satisfaction settling into my bones. I do not feel an ounce of pity. I do not feel a single shred of guilt. I have waited 35 years to watch the universe finally serve my mother and brother the exact karma they have so desperately earned. Julian steps slightly closer to me, wrapping his strong arm securely around my waist. He pulls me flush against his side, his physical presence a warm, grounding anchor amidst the screaming chaos. He leans down, placing a soft, lingering kiss on my temple as we watch the two families violently tear each other apart. We do not say a single word. We do not need to. We simply observe the magnificent catastrophe we just orchestrated. It is beautiful in its pure destructive honesty. They are finally showing their true toxic colors to each other without the expensive champagne and the towering floral arrangements to hide behind. The screaming in the room reaches a fever pitch. Harrison violently threatens to call the Atlanta police on Jamal for wire fraud. Vivian shrieks that she will call the local news and expose Harrison's federal embezzlement investigation before the SEC even has a chance to make an arrest. They are completely cornered. There is absolutely no way out of this VIP suite with their dignity or their finances intact. Vivian looks frantically around the room, her eyes wild and desperate. She sees Harrison dialing his phone. She sees Lauren ripping the diamond necklace off her throat and throwing it at Jamal. She sees me standing tall and untouchable beside a real billionaire, while her golden child cowers against the wall, rubbing his slapped cheek. Her pristine reputation is completely destroyed. The social banishment from the elite circles she fears more than death itself is now absolutely inevitable. Seeing no other way to escape the brutal, devastating consequences of her own actions, Vivian suddenly stops screaming. Her eyes go incredibly wide, staring at nothing in particular. She reaches up with both hands clutching the heavy diamond necklace at her chest. She lets out a loud, ragged, dramatic gasp for air. Her knees buckle beneath her custom silver gown. She collapses heavily onto the floor of the VIP bridal suite, clutching her chest and gasping loudly for breath, as if her heart has simply given out. The heavy thud of my mother's body hitting the floor sends a massive shockwave through the room. Her custom silver gown pools around her on the thick carpet as she writhes and gasps for air. Her hands are clawing frantically at the expensive diamond necklace around her throat, as if it is suddenly strangling her. She lets out these loud, ragged, wheezing sounds that bounce off the soundproof walls. Her eyes are rolling back in her head just enough to look terrifying to anyone who does not know her as well as I do. It is a truly spectacular performance, worthy of an Academy Award. Jamal completely abandons his bitter screaming match with Lauren. The sheer panic of losing his primary protector, his loudest defender, overrides his anger at his new bride. He drops heavily to his knees beside Vivian, sliding across the carpet in his expensive rented tuxedo. He grabs her flailing hands, trying to steady her. "Mom, stay with me. Mom, just breathe," Jamal begs, his voice cracking with genuine terror. He snaps his head up and glares at me with a look of absolute violent hatred. "Look at what you are doing, Maya!" he screams, pointing a shaking finger at my face. "You are killing our mother, you heartless monster. She is having a heart attack because you cannot let anything go. You are literally murdering her right in front of us." Harrison forgets his own crushing bankruptcy for a split second. The sheer liability of a woman dying at his daughter's wedding reception completely short-circuits his brain. "Somebody call 911!" Harrison yells, his voice high-pitched and frantic as he pats down his suit jacket looking for his phone. "We need an ambulance immediately. She is going into cardiac arrest. Get a doctor in here." Lauren backs away until her spine hits the wall, her hands pressed tightly over her ears. She is hyperventilating, murmuring incoherently about how her perfect day has turned into a literal crime scene. The two families are completely losing their minds, reacting exactly the way Vivian planned when she decided to execute this dramatic physical collapse. I do not move a single muscle. I do not gasp. I do not reach out to help her. Julian stands beside me, his posture completely relaxed, his dark eyes watching the scene unfold with a mild, analytical curiosity. He knows I do not need his intervention. I look down at the woman who gave birth to me. I watch the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest under the silver fabric. I study the precise way her hands are clutching her throat, making sure not to actually scratch her own skin or ruin her carefully applied makeup. I have seen this exact theatrical performance before. I remember being 17 years old and watching her pull this identical stunt when my father packed his bags to leave the house during a particularly brutal argument. It is a highly calculated physiological manipulation designed specifically to completely redirect the blame, to change the narrative, and to desperately escape any form of accountability when she is backed into an inescapable corner. I slowly detach myself from Julian's side. The heavy silence of my movement cuts through the frantic yelling. I take a few deliberate, unhurried steps forward until I am standing directly over her writhing form on the floral carpet. Jamal tries to lunge upward to physically push me away, but Julian's security detail instantly steps forward, blocking him. The subtle shift of the massive guards causes my brother to freeze in absolute terror, shrinking back down next to Vivian. I look down at my mother's fluttering eyelids. The ragged, gasping noises she is making sound incredibly forced up close. I slowly reach into my small designer clutch and pull out my phone. The screen glows brightly in the dim, warm light of the VIP suite, casting a harsh shadow over my face. "What are you doing?" "Call the paramedics!" Jamal screams again, tears actually streaming down his panicked face. "I am not calling an ambulance, Mom," I say, my voice slicing through the frantic, chaotic noise of the room with an absolute freezing clarity. My tone is completely flat, entirely devoid of any daughterly concern or panic. I tap the glass screen of my phone, making sure the clicking sound is loud enough for her to hear over her own fake wheezing. "I am calling the Atlanta Police Department," I announce, watching her body language very closely. "It is time to report the $200,000 theft from my trust fund. If you are going to die tonight, Mom, you are going to die as a documented felon, and I will make sure the police catalog every single piece of jewelry on your body as stolen evidence before the paramedics even load you onto the stretcher." The effect of my words is absolutely instantaneous. It is as if I have injected a massive dose of adrenaline directly into her veins. The loud, ragged gasping completely and utterly stops. The fluttering eyelids snap open, revealing eyes that are perfectly clear and sharp. The trembling hands that were so dramatically clutching her chest suddenly flatten firmly against the carpet. Vivian pushes herself up off the floor with a terrifying speed and an agility that completely defies her age and her supposedly failing heart. She does not need Jamal's help to stand. She swats his hands away when he tries to grab her arm. She stands up tall, smoothing down the front of her custom silver gown and taking a deep, completely steady breath. Her breathing is entirely normal. Her posture is rigid. The victim act is entirely gone. The fragile, dying mother has vanished into thin air, leaving only the brutal, calculating predator behind. The entire room stares at her in absolute stunned disbelief. Harrison lowers his phone, his mouth hanging open. Lauren lets out a confused little whimper. Even Jamal looks up at his mother with a profound sense of shock, realizing he was just completely manipulated by her performance too. Vivian stands before me, radiating a dark, vicious energy. Her face contorts into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred, shedding the last remaining layer of her polite high society facade. She glares at me with a venom so toxic it practically burns the air between us. She does not care that Julian Pierce is watching. She does not care that the wealthy white family she was trying to impress is staring at her like she is a literal monster. "You ungrateful, wretched little girl!" Vivian hisses, her voice no longer weak or breathless, but sharp and vibrating with pure malice. "You have always been a cancer in this family, a stubborn, miserable stain on our reputation. I should have left you on the streets the moment you dropped out of school. You think your money makes you untouchable, but you will always be nothing but a bitter, lonely disappointment who has to buy a man's affection just to get invited to a real party." She takes a step closer to me, pointing a shaking, perfectly manicured finger directly at my face. "You are deliberately trying to destroy the only son I have because you are eaten alive by your own jealousy. You have spent your entire pathetic life trying to ruin my joy, trying to tear down everything I built from the ground up. You are no daughter of mine. You hear me. You are dead to me. Maya." I listen to her vicious, venomous rant without flinching. Her words do not sting anymore. They do not carry the power they used to hold over me when I was a scared 25-year-old girl, begging for her approval. The absolute lack of control she has over me is what is driving her truly insane. She is pouring all her hatred out, hoping to see me break, hoping to see me cry, hoping to see me run out of the room in tears. But I just stand there holding my phone, looking at her with a calm, detached observation. The mother I spent my life trying to please is completely gone, and I feel nothing but a profound, liberating sense of emptiness toward her. She has played her final card. The ultimate manipulation has failed completely, and there is nowhere left for her to hide from the absolute destruction she brought upon herself. Vivian realizes her ultimate performance has yielded absolutely nothing. The heavy silence in the VIP bridal suite stretches tight like a piano wire ready to snap. She looks at my completely blank face and sees that the well of my empathy has entirely run dry. There is no more daughter left to manipulate, and the realization does not bring her sorrow. It brings her an explosive, terrifying rage. Her hands clench into tight fists at her sides, her custom silver gown rustling violently as she takes a threatening step toward me. "You are a monster!" she screams, her voice raw and tearing at the edges, dropping all pretenses of maternal elegance. She points a perfectly manicured finger directly between my eyes. A cold, unfeeling monster who comes into her own brother's wedding reception just to destroy everything we have built. "You think your little money makes you untouchable in Atlanta. But you are wrong, Maya. You are so incredibly wrong." Vivian draws herself up, expanding her chest as if she can physically dominate the room. Through sheer matriarchal authority, she starts wielding the only weapon she thinks she still possesses, her perceived social standing. "I am a founding member of the Covenant Baptist Church," she declares, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. "I sit on the executive board of the Oakhead Country Club. I know every politician, every pastor, every elite socialite in this entire state. I built this family name from the ground up, and I will use every single connection I have to utterly annihilate you." She paces back and forth, the heels of her expensive shoes sinking deep into the carpet. "You want to play dirty? I will show you dirty," Vivian continues, her eyes wild with a vindictive, terrifying energy. "By tomorrow morning, every single person in our circle will know that you are a vicious, unstable woman who tried to ruin her family out of pure spite. I will make sure no respectable black family in this city ever does business with you. I will have you blacklisted from every charity gala, every corporate board, every high society event in the greater Atlanta area." She stops pacing and plants herself right in front of me, her face flushed a deep, angry crimson. "You will be a complete pariah. Maya, you will have all that new money and absolutely nowhere to spend it. Nobody will look at you. Nobody will speak to you. You will be a ghost in this city. Lauren and Harrison watched this display of absolute venom with a mixture of awe and horror. Even Jamal looks slightly terrified of the monster he has enabled all these years. Vivian is practically foaming at the mouth, her pristine image completely discarded in favor of pure, unrestricted malice. She is desperate to regain control, using the threat of social exile as her absolute final executioner's axe. "And we are starting tonight," she spits out, jabbing her finger aggressively toward the heavy soundproof doors of the VIP suite. "You think you can just waltz into my event and disrespect me in front of my guests? Well, I am the mother of the groom, and this is my party. I personally know the management of this hotel. I am going to walk out there and have security drag you and your little entourage out by your hair. You will never step foot in this city's high society again," Vivian shrieks, the veins in her neck bulging against her diamond necklace. "I will have you thrown out of the Grand Regency tonight. You are banned." "Maya, do you hear me? You are permanently banned." She stands there, chest heaving, waiting for the fear to finally wash over my face. She expects me to shrink back to beg for mercy, to realize that social exile in the South is a fate worse than death. She genuinely believes that her influence at Sunday service and her country club luncheons can somehow overpower a private equity titan who holds her entire reality hostage. For a long moment, I do not say a single word. I just look at her, studying the frantic, desperate energy vibrating through her entire body. And then a sound escapes my throat. It starts low in my chest, a quiet vibration that slowly builds into a soft chuckle. The chuckle grows bubbling up past my lips until it blossoms into a full, genuine, chilling laugh. The sound of my laughter echoes off the walls of the bridal suite, entirely devoid of warmth or humor. It is a dark, dangerous sound that makes Vivian physically recoil. She stares at me, her eyes widening as my laughter fills the stifling air. Jamal shrinks back against the wall, his face pale. Lauren looks like she wants to sink through the floorboards. They have never heard me laugh like this before. It is the sound of absolute, total invincibility. Julian stands beside me, a proud, dangerous smirk playing on his handsome lips. He reaches out and softly runs his hand down my back, feeling the raw power radiating from my spine. He knows exactly what is coming next. He knows the beautiful, devastating trap my mother has just blindly walked right into. "You find this funny?" Vivian shrieks, her voice cracking as her anger battles with her sudden confusion. "You think I am joking? I will have you physically removed from this property, right?" Now I stop laughing. The cold, clinical deadliness returns to my face. Instantly, I lift my right hand into the air between us, my fingers perfectly still. For just a fraction of a second, then with a sharp, crisp motion, I snap my fingers. The sound is like a gunshot in the tense, silent room. Immediately, the lead security guard standing by the heavy oak door reaches for the brass handle. He pulls the thick, soundproof door wide open, revealing the brightly lit hallway outside the VIP suite. Standing there, waiting patiently with his hands clasped neatly behind his back, is a tall, distinguished older man in an immaculate tailored suit with a gold name badge pinned to his lapel. It is Mr. Sterling, the general manager of the Grand Regency Hotel. He is a man who commands absolute respect and authority over this entire luxurious establishment. Vivian recognizes him instantly. Her face lights up with a triumphant, vicious glee, thinking her threats have just miraculously materialized. "Mr. Sterling," Vivian calls out, her voice immediately dropping back into that syrupy, entitled tone of a wealthy patron. "Thank God you are here. I am the mother of the groom, and I need you to call your hotel security right this instant. This woman has crashed my private event, and I want her completely banned from the premises." Immediately, Mr. Sterling steps fully into the VIP suite, the heavy door clicking shut behind him. His posture is immaculate, his silver hair perfectly groomed. He holds a leather folio under his left arm. My mother stands there, her chest puffed out with arrogant satisfaction, fully expecting the general manager of the most prestigious hotel in Atlanta to immediately summon his staff and drag me out into the street by my hair. Vivian points a trembling finger at me, demanding action, her voice dripping with the entitlement of a woman who believes her country club membership makes her royalty. "Mr. Sterling, I demand you remove her, this instant." Vivian repeats, her voice cracking slightly as she realizes the older man has not even glanced in her direction. "This woman is trespassing on a private event, and she is harassing my guests. Call your security team immediately." Mr. Sterling completely ignores the mother of the groom. He does not offer her a polite smile. He does not apologize for the intrusion. He walks right past Vivian, leaving her standing there with her arm outstretched, looking incredibly foolish. He stops directly in front of me, and Julian planting his polished leather shoes onto the thick carpet. He does not look at the screaming bride or the sweating father of the bride. He only looks at me. Mr. Sterling bows deeply, a gesture of absolute profound respect that makes the entire room freeze in sheer disbelief. "Good evening, boss," Mr. Sterling says, his voice calm and incredibly professional. "I apologize for interrupting, but the security detail informed me you required my direct assistance in the bridal suite." The word boss hangs in the stifling air of the bridal suite, dropping like a massive, concrete block onto my mother's perfectly styled head. Vivian staggers backward, as if Mr. Sterling has just physically struck her. Jamal's jaw drops open so wide it almost unhinges. Lauren and Harrison shrink further back against the wallpaper, completely paralyzed by this impossible turn of events. The air in the room is suddenly too thick to breathe. "Boss," Vivian whispers the word, barely making it past her trembling lips. She looks wildly from Mr. Sterling to me and back again, her eyes wide with a frantic, terrified confusion. "What are you talking about? She does not work here. She is a dropout. She is a failure. She is nothing. You are the general manager. Why are you bowing to her?" I take a slow, elegant step forward, closing the distance between me and the woman who just threatened to banish me from Atlanta society. I tilt my head, studying her absolute panic with a cold, clinical satisfaction. I let her sit in that confusion for a few agonizing seconds, letting the reality of her powerlessness wash over her completely. "You really should pay more attention to the financial news, Mom," I say, my voice perfectly level and devoid of any sympathy. My private equity firm Apex Holdings successfully acquired the entire Grand Regency hotel chain exactly 3 months ago. It was a very quiet, very lucrative merger that gave my company absolute controlling interest over every single one of their luxury properties across the East Coast. I gesture slowly around the opulent cream-colored room, pointing to the glittering crystal chandelier above our heads and the thick custom carpet beneath our feet. "I own the building you are currently standing in, Mom. I own the grand ballroom where you just humiliated me in front of 160 guests. I own the prestigious catering company that prepared your lavish multi-course dinner. I own the elite security team you just tried to weaponize against me. I am the absolute landlord of this entire establishment." Vivian's knees actually buckle slightly at the sheer magnitude of the revelation. She has to reach out and grab the back of a velvet dining chair to keep herself from collapsing to the floor again. The terrifying realization washes over her, completely wiping away decades of cruel, arrogant superiority. The daughter she threw away, the daughter she just threatened to have physically dragged out into the street, is literally the owner of the most elite high society venue in the entire state of Georgia. "Your threat to have me thrown out is incredibly pathetic, Mom," I continue, my words striking her like physical blows, breaking down the last remaining walls of her delusion. "You cannot banish me from a city that I am actively buying up, block by block. You cannot use your little church connections or your silly country club friends to exile the woman who holds the commercial deeds to the very buildings where you host your pathetic social climbing events. Your social influence is an illusion. My financial power is absolute reality." Jamal is sweating so profusely that his crisp white dress shirt is practically transparent beneath his tuxedo jacket. He looks at Mr. Sterling, hoping against hope that this is all some elaborate prank. But the general manager simply stands there, his hands clasped respectfully behind his back, waiting patiently for my orders. Julian leans against the wall behind me, a dark, magnificent smile playing on his handsome lips as he watches my toxic family completely disintegrate under the crushing weight of my empire. "You played your final card, Mom?" I say, watching the tears of absolute bitter defeat finally pool in Vivian's eyes, and it was a terrible, desperate hand. You tried to use your fake social standing to intimidate a woman who moves billions of dollars across the global market before breakfast. You are not a powerful matriarch, you are just a bitter, broke woman standing in a hotel. You cannot afford. Throwing a pathetic tantrum in front of the landlord. You have absolutely nothing left to threaten me with. Vivian covers her mouth with her trembling hands, letting out a quiet, muffled sob of pure devastation. Her entire identity was wrapped up in being better than me, in proving that her golden child was the true success story. Now she is standing in a rented dress inside a hotel I own, watching her beloved son cower in fear while her wealthy new-in-laws realize they have married into absolute poverty. There is no escape from the absolute humiliation I have orchestrated for her. I turn my attention away from my shattered mother and look directly at the general manager. Mr. Sterling is perfectly attentive, his posture rigid and respectful, ready to execute my commands without a single moment of hesitation. The power dynamic in the room has settled permanently into its new configuration. There is no more arguing. There is no more negotiating. There is only the swift, brutal execution of consequences. "Mr. Sterling," I say, my voice slicing through the heavy, terrified silence of the VIP suite. "I need you to go down to the primary accounting office right now. Print the final itemized invoice for tonight's entire wedding reception. Every single bottle of imported vintage champagne, every single rare white orchid, every single hour of staff overtime, calculate the absolute total, down to the very last cent. Do not leave a single expense off that ledger." I look past Mr. Sterling, locking my cold, merciless gaze directly onto my golden child brother, who is currently trembling in his expensive rented tuxedo. His eyes are wide with pure financial terror, knowing exactly what I am about to do, and when the invoice is printed, I instruct Mr. Sterling, my voice dropping into a deadly, uncompromising register. "Hand it directly to the groom." Mr. Sterling nods his head, once a crisp, efficient movement that signals absolute obedience. "Yes, boss," he says, his voice steady and completely unbothered by the sheer panic radiating from my family. "I will have the accounting department generate the final itemized folio immediately. It will just take a few moments." He turns on his polished heel and exits the VIP bridal suite, the heavy soundproof door clicking shut behind him, leaving us all trapped in a suffocating bubble of absolute tension. The air is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Julian shifts slightly, pulling me just a fraction closer to his side, his physical warmth, a stark contrast to the freezing terror currently paralyzing my mother and brother. Nobody speaks. The silence stretches out, turning seconds into agonizing hours. Vivian is staring at the carpet, her chest heaving as she tries to process the complete annihilation of her social standing. Lauren is weeping softly, her extravagant white dress looking completely ridiculous. Now that everyone knows it was purchased with stolen money, Harrison is leaning heavily against the wall, looking like a man who is about to face a federal judge. We wait in that terrible quiet room for exactly 4 minutes. Then the heavy oak door swings open again. Mr. Sterling walks back in. Holding a sleek silver tray resting on top of the tray is a thick stack of pristine white paper. The final invoice for the most lavish fake wedding Atlanta has ever seen. Mr. Sterling does not hesitate. He walks directly past Vivian, ignoring her completely, and stops right in front of Jamal. The general manager extends the silver tray, offering the massive bill to the groom. "Your final folio, sir," Mr. Sterling says, his tone perfectly polite, but carrying an undeniable weight of authority. Jamal stares at the stack of paper as if Mr. Sterling is handing him a live grenade. His hands are shaking so violently he can barely lift them. He slowly reaches out and picks up the invoice, his eyes scanning the bottom line. The color drains completely from his face, leaving him looking sickly and gray. $300,000 staring back at him in bold black ink, but instead of breaking down completely, Jamal attempts one final pathetic grasp at his fabricated dignity. He lets out a loud, forced scoff, a dry, hollow sound that lacks any real confidence. He tosses the thick stack of papers back onto the silver tray, puffing out his chest and trying to look down his nose at me and the general manager. "This is completely ridiculous," Jamal sneers, his voice cracking slightly as he tries to project an aura of wealth and control. "You are wasting your time. Maya trying to humiliate me with a piece of paper. I already paid this entire bill. I wired the funds to the Grand Regency Accounting Department. Yesterday morning, the venue, the catering, the imported flowers, it is all fully compensated. Your little power trip is completely pointless, because I do not owe this hotel a single dime." I look at my golden child brother, watching him cling desperately to his web of lies. I let a slow, dark smile spread across my face. It is the deadliest, coldest smile I have ever worn. A smile that promises absolute and total destruction. "You are right about one thing, Jamal," I say, my voice perfectly calm and smooth, dropping into a deadly register that makes the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "You did initiate a wire transfer yesterday morning for exactly $300,000. You authorized the payment through a private offshore account. The exact same account you and Mom used to hide. The $200,000 you stole from my grandmother's trust fund." Jamal's fake confidence shatters instantly. His eyes widen in pure, unadulterated terror as he realizes I have tracked every single penny of his fraudulent transactions. He takes a clumsy step backward, bumping into the small glass table behind him. But here's the problem with stealing from a woman who runs a massive private equity firm. I continue taking a slow, deliberate step toward him. I know exactly how to trace stolen assets, and I know exactly which legal levers to pull to stop a fraudulent transaction dead in its tracks. My legal team spent the entire afternoon filing an emergency injunction in federal court, providing the audio recording of your confession and the bank statements as irrefutable proof of your embezzlement. I tilt my head, watching the absolute despair wash over his sweating face. "A federal judge reviewed the evidence and issued an immediate freeze on your offshore account at exactly 5 o'clock this evening. Right as your beautiful bride was walking down the aisle, the asset freeze went into effect, meaning your wire transfer was halted. The funds were completely blocked. The payment bounced. Jamal, you have not paid for a single thing in this entire building." Vivian lets out a loud, horrified gasp, covering her mouth with both hands. Lauren lets out a high-pitched wail of pure misery, realizing the nightmare is somehow getting even worse. Harrison closes his eyes, sliding down the wall until he is sitting heavily on the carpet, completely defeated. Jamal looks down at the silver tray. In Mr. Sterling's hands, the $300,000 invoice is now a massive, inescapable debt, strapped directly to his chest. He has no money, he has no credit, he has absolutely nothing left to hide behind. The fake tech CEO is totally bankrupt. "So here's the reality of your situation, brother," I announce, my voice echoing with absolute finality. "You are currently standing in my hotel, consuming my expensive food and drinking my vintage champagne without any means to pay for it in the state of Georgia. That is legally classified as theft of services, and given the massive financial scale of this particular theft, it is a severe felony." I raise my wrist, checking the diamond watch strapped to my arm. I look back at Jamal and Vivian, their faces twisted in absolute panic. You have exactly 10 minutes. I declare, the financial guillotine finally dropping on their necks. 10 minutes to produce $300,000 out of your own pockets to settle this invoice in full, if that balance is not completely cleared. By the time the clock runs out, I am instructing Mr. Sterling to press formal charges for felony theft of services against both the bride and the groom. Jamal falls to his knees, the reality of his impending arrest crushing his legs beneath him. Lauren screams at her father, begging for help, but Harrison just shakes his head, weeping silently. And just so we are completely clear, I add, my voice dropping to a harsh, unforgiving whisper. Do not even think about trying to run out the back door to escape the bill, because my security team has already locked down the perimeter and the Atlanta Police Department is currently waiting right downstairs in the main lobby. The clock is ticking. Jamal, you better figure out how to pay your tab. The countdown begins, and the heavy reality of the situation finally crashes down on the room with the force of a falling building. Harrison looks at the $300,000 invoice resting on the silver tray, and then he looks at the open door of the VIP suite. His old money survival instincts kick into high gear, completely overriding whatever tiny shred of loyalty he had to this fake marriage. He knows that if he and his daughter are standing in this room when the Atlanta police walk through that door, they will be held legally liable as co-signers to the fraudulent wedding reception. Harrison gasps out, his voice cracking with pure terror as he scrambles up from the floor. He grabs Lauren by the arm, pulling her so hard the delicate lace sleeve of her custom wedding gown actually rips. Lauren does not even try to fight him. The bride kicks off her expensive white heels, leaving them abandoned on the thick carpet so she can run faster. She does not look back at Jamal. She does not say goodbye to the man she just vowed to love forever. She just gathers the heavy skirts of her dress and practically sprints out of the bridal suite, following her sweating father down the hallway as they flee the hotel like common criminals escaping a crime scene. Jamal watches his new wife physically abandon him. Running away to save herself from the massive financial guillotine, he drops to his broken knees right there on the floor, the sharp fabric of his rented tuxedo pants tearing against the carpet. He is completely alone now, the fake tech CEO stripped of all his arrogant illusions. Tears, actual genuine tears of absolute despair, begin to stream down his face, leaving wet streaks across his cheeks. He looks up at me, his hands clasped together in front of his chest, in a desperate, pathetic gesture of prayer. "Maya, please, Jamal," sobs his voice, breaking into a high-pitched, pathetic wail. "Please, I am begging you. You have to give me a loan. You are a billionaire, Maya. $300,000 is nothing to you. It is pocket change. Please just pay the invoice and keep me out of prison. I will do anything you want. I will wash your cars. I will clean your office. Just please do not let them arrest me. I cannot survive in federal prison. Maya, please have mercy on your little brother." Vivian drops to her knees right next to her golden child, her custom silver gown pooling in a messy heap around her shaking legs. Her pristine matriarchal pride is completely entirely gone, replaced by the raw, naked terror of a woman watching her entire world burn to ash. She crawls slightly forward across the carpet, reaching out with her trembling hands to grasp the hem of my elegant evening gown. "Maya, my sweet girl." Vivian weeps, her tears ruining her expensive makeup, leaving dark black streaks of mascara running down her face. "I'm so sorry for everything I said out there on the stage. I was just confused. I was just stressed about the wedding. Please, you cannot do this to us. We are your family. We are your flesh and blood. You cannot send your own mother and brother to jail in front of the entire church congregation. Remember, family? Maya, family is everything. You have to save us." I look down at the two people kneeling at my feet, begging for scraps of mercy from the woman they spent 35 years actively trying to destroy. I do not feel a single ounce of pity. I do not feel a flicker of guilt. I just feel a profound, absolute clarity. I slowly reach down and carefully peel my mother's trembling fingers off the fabric of my dress, stepping back so she cannot touch me again. "Do not ever use that word with me again. I say, my voice perfectly calm and completely devoid of any warmth echoing off the walls with icy precision. Family is not just shared DNA, Mom. Family is supposed to be a sanctuary. Family is supposed to show up for you when you are struggling, not kick you out onto the street when your mental health is failing. Family does not steal your grandmother's inheritance to fund a fake lifestyle, and family certainly does not grab a microphone in a room full of 160 people to publicly humiliate you and call you a pathetic failure. I looked down into Jamal's terrified, weeping eyes and then back to my mother's shattered face. You think blood entitles you to a bailout? I continue, my words slicing through their pathetic sobbing like a perfectly sharpened scalpel. Blood does not give you permission to abuse me. It does not give you a free pass to steal from me. And it absolutely does not obligate me to save you from the catastrophic consequences of your own disgusting actions. You made your choices. You chose to be cruel. You chose to be thieves. And now you get to choose which bunk bed you want in a federal penitentiary. I am not giving you a loan, Jamal, I state with absolute devastating finality. I am not paying a single cent of this invoice. I turn my back on them, completely dismissing their existence. I reach out and smoothly take Julian's waiting arm, feeling the solid, comforting warmth of his presence beside me. He looks down at me with a profound, glowing pride in his dark eyes, fully aware of the absolute titan I have become. Mr. Sterling, I say, nodding to the general manager who is still holding the silver tray. Time is up. Process the theft of services charge. The heavy oak doors of the VIP suite swing open wide right on cue. 4 Atlanta police officers in full uniform step into the room, their heavy boots thudding against the carpet, followed closely by my elite hotel security detail. The officers take one look at the weeping groom and the hysterical mother of the groom and immediately reach for their handcuffs. The agonizing screams and frantic sobbing of my mother and brother fill the air as the officers pull them up from the carpet, reading them their rights. But I do not look back. I do not stop walking. Julian and I glide smoothly out of the bridal suite, our footsteps perfectly synchronized, leaving the debt-ridden, chaotic mess of my former family entirely behind us. We walk together through the grand, magnificent lobby of the hotel, the crystal chandeliers casting a warm, golden glow over our path. The remaining wedding guests whisper and stare as we pass, but they part like the Red Sea, offering nothing but absolute terrified respect. We step through the revolving glass doors and out into the cool, crisp Atlanta night air, taking a deep, refreshing breath of pure, unadulterated freedom. The passage of time is the ultimate equalizer, taking exactly 6 short months to completely rewrite the history of the Caldwell family. The lavish high society wedding was legally annulled the very next morning by a frantic and humiliated Lauren, who immediately fled the state to avoid the media fallout. The SEC moved with ruthless efficiency, dismantling Harrison's old money empire piece by piece, leaving his family with absolutely nothing but mounting legal fees and public disgrace. Jamal's fake tech CEO persona was entirely obliterated in federal court. The audio recording and the offshore bank statements proved his guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt, and he is currently serving a lengthy prison sentence for wire fraud and massive corporate embezzlement, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of a custom-tailored tuxedo. As for Vivian, the social exile she so desperately feared became her permanent absolute reality. The church elders formally asked her to step down from all her committees. Her country club membership was publicly revoked, and her elite friends stopped returning her calls instantly. Stripped of the stolen trust fund money and drowning in legal debts from trying to defend her golden child, she was forced to sell her sprawling suburban estate. She now lives completely isolated in a tiny rundown apartment on the outskirts of the city. A total social pariah, left alone with nothing but the bitter memories of the empire she destroyed with her own arrogance. The cool autumn breeze sweeps across the massive open-air balcony of my New York City penthouse apartment, ruffling the silk fabric of my evening robe. I stand near the edge, looking out over the magnificent glittering skyline of Manhattan, feeling the absolute weightless joy of total victory. Julian steps out onto the terrace, wrapping his strong, warm arms around my waist from behind and resting his chin softly on my shoulder as we look out at the city that never sleeps. I am not the 35-year-old pathetic college dropout my mother tried to convince the world I was. I am a titan of industry, a woman who turned deep, profound pain into a billion-dollar private equity empire. The toxic chains of my past have been completely and utterly shattered, leaving behind a woman who rules her own destiny with absolute, unyielding power. I lean back against the man who loves me exactly for who I am, smiling into the cool night air, completely free and forever untouchable. The most profound lesson from Maya's journey is that your worth is never defined by the toxic people who belittle you, even if they share your blood. Family should be a sanctuary of support, not a weapon of manipulation. When faced with emotional abuse and constant humiliation, the most powerful response is not to shrink or beg for acceptance, but to walk away and quietly build your own empire. True power lies in setting unbreakable boundaries and choosing to surround yourself with people who recognize your value. Success and self-respect are the ultimate revenge against those who tried breaking you. If you have ever had to walk away from a toxic environment to protect your peace and build your own success, hit the like button, subscribe, and share your empowering story in the comments below.